The station was the size of a small moon and looked like someone had glued 11 different buildings together in the dark. It rotated slowly, catching the light of a distant star that no human had ever bothered to name. Inside, it smelled like recycled air and something faintly chemical that the ventilation system never quite managed to clear out. Lena Wade walked through the main corridor with her bag over one shoulder and her badge on a lanyard around her neck. She had been to this station 4 times before. She knew which corridors went nowhere and which bathrooms had hot water. She knew that the food in the East Wing was better than the food in the West Wing, and she knew that the Vorith delegates liked to arrive early so they could choose their seats before anyone else got there. She knew a lot of things about this place. That was her job. Danny Fisk walked beside her, slightly too fast, because he always walked slightly too fast. He was carrying 2 bags, his own and a case of documents he could have sent ahead but didn't, because he was the kind of person who didn't fully trust anything he wasn't physically holding. He had a notepad in his jacket pocket. An actual paper notepad. Lena had stopped commenting on it a long time ago. "How many delegations this year?" he asked. 11, she said. "And we're the only ones without military." "We're always the only ones without military." He wrote something down. She didn't ask what. The plenary hall was large enough to make a person feel small on purpose. That was the point of it. Whoever had designed this station had understood that the first rule of diplomacy was to make every individual feel like they were part of something bigger than themselves. The ceiling curved up into a dome of dark material that showed a slow-moving image of the surrounding star system. The table in the center was round. No head. No foot. Everyone equal, at least in theory. The other delegations were already filing in. The Durathi came first, tall, gray-skinned, moving in a tight group the way they always did, their fleet admiral's rank badge catching the light from above. Behind them came the Krennic, heavier, slower, their Warcast elder carried by 2 aides because his legs had stopped working well years ago but nobody had told him he needed to stop going to things. The Pulhari sent 7 people, one of whom was ceremonial military, wearing armor that hadn't seen actual battle since before humans had discovered fire. Every delegation had someone in uniform. Every delegation except Earth's. Lena set her bag down at Earth's seat and arranged her things. A small flag. A tablet. A water glass. She sat down. Danny sat beside her and immediately opened his notepad. Sethval, the Vorith Prime Delegate, crossed the room toward her before the session even started. He moved in the way that 6 limbs made possible, smooth, efficient, covering ground faster than it looked like he should. His translator pendant blinked green. "Delegate Wade," he said. The translator gave his voice a flat, even quality, like a calm person delivering routine information. "Sethval," she said. "Good to see you again." "Where are your military representatives?" he asked. He wasn't being rude. She had learned that about him over 4 summits. He asked questions the way a person checks whether a door is locked, not accusatory, just practical. He wanted to know the state of things. "Earth sends civilian diplomatic teams," she said. "It is our standard approach. We find it keeps the focus on dialogue rather than posture." He was quiet for a moment. His secondary eyes, the smaller pair above the larger ones, moved slightly. She had learned that meant he was processing something he found unusual. "I see," he said finally, and went back to his seat. Danny wrote something down. The session opened with the standard presentations. Trade routes. Border disputes. A resource disagreement between the Durathi and the Mari that had been going on for 8 years and would probably go on for 8 more. Lena listened, spoke when it was Earth's turn, asked the right questions at the right times. She was good at this. She had been doing it for 15 years. What she noticed, the way she always noticed it, was the moment the other delegation stopped watching Earth's seat. It was not obvious. It never was. But there was something in the room during the first hour of every summit, a kind of tension, a collective alertness, and it always eased once the other delegations confirmed what they were seeing. 2 people. A small flag. No uniforms. No rank. No military. The fleet admiral of the Durathi let his shoulders drop, just slightly. The Krennic Warcast elder stopped gripping the edge of the table. The Pulhari ceremonial guard, who had been standing at rigid attention, shifted his weight back onto his heels. Danny noticed it too, this time. She saw him look around the room slowly, and then write something down with the careful attention of a person who does not yet understand what they have seen but knows it matters. He leaned toward her during the midday break. "They relaxed," he said quietly. "All of them. When they figured out we didn't bring anyone military." "Yes," she said. "Why?" She picked up her water glass. "Because we are not a threat today." "We are never a threat," he said. She looked at him. "That is what they decided today," she said. "That is a different thing." He didn't push it. He knew, by now, when she was giving him the edge of an answer and when she was giving him the whole thing. That had been the edge. That evening, in her quarters on the station's diplomatic residential level, Lena sat on the small bed and opened her personal terminal. The quarters were clean and plain. One window that showed open space. One chair. One desk. She had stayed in worse places. She opened a file. The file was flagged Level 9 classified, which meant almost nobody could look at it, which meant she had needed to ask twice and provide 2 separate confirmations to get it moved to her personal device before departure. She had done this before every major summit for the past 6 years. She never read it here. She just opened it and looked at the name on the front page, the way a person might look at a word they already know the meaning of just to confirm it is still the same word. Harlan. Verith Station. 2219, Incident Record. Below the title, in small letters, Xenopsychological Assessment. Dr. F. Gould. Classification, Restricted. She looked at it for a moment. The name at the top. The date. Then she closed the file. Outside the window, the star the station orbited was disappearing behind the curve of a distant planet. The light went from yellow to orange to something with no good name. Danny was 2 doors down, probably still writing in his notepad. She turned off the terminal and lay back and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow the summit would continue. There would be more arguments about borders, more careful language about resources, more of the slow, patient work of keeping 11 species from doing something they could not take back. She was good at it. She had always been good at it. She thought about Colonel Pete Harlan, who had sat in a chair at a table not very different from the one downstairs and done nothing wrong at all. She closed her eyes. The station turned slowly in the dark. The file that almost nobody had read started with a date and a weather report. The weather report was automatic, part of the station's standard logging system, which recorded conditions inside the building every 6 hours whether or not anyone cared. On the morning of the incident, the station had been running at standard pressure, standard temperature, standard humidity. Nothing unusual. What followed the weather report was not standard anything. Danny found the incident summary on the second morning of the summit. Not the classified version, that was locked behind clearances he did not have, but a short summary, available to senior diplomatic staff, 5 pages long, the language careful and stripped of anything that might mean too much. He found it in the background briefing pack that Lena's office sent before every major summit and that he usually read on the shuttle and then forgot about. He had not forgotten about it this time. He read it at breakfast, in the East Wing dining room, while around him Dorothi aides and Pulhari translators ate things that smelled interesting and talked in languages his earpiece could not quite follow. He read it twice. Then he folded it. It was printed on actual paper, because Level 5 summary documents were not supposed to exist as digital files in transit, and put it in his jacket pocket next to his notepad. Then he went to find Lena. She was already in the corridor, heading to the morning session, her badge around her neck and her tablet under her arm. She walked the way she always walked, like she was going somewhere she had already been in her head. "The Harlan file," he said. She did not slow down. "What about it? What did he do wrong?" She was quiet for a moment. Long enough that he thought she was not going to answer. "Nothing," she said. "That is the whole problem." Colonel Pete Harlan had been 51 years old at the time of the 2219 summit. He had served for 28 years. He had been in 3 wars and one thing that the official record classified differently from a war but that everyone who had been there called a war anyway. He was described, in his service file, as reliable, steady, and difficult to rattle. His commanding officers had used variations of those 3 words so many times over the years that it had started to look like they were all working from the same template. He had been selected for the 2219 summit because the political situation had required a gesture. Earth needed to show that it was serious. The summit was about a border dispute between 2 species that had, 6 months earlier, come very close to a shooting war. Earth was mediating. Earth wanted to demonstrate commitment. Someone had decided that sending a military officer would communicate the right kind of seriousness. That someone had not read Dr. Faye Gould's preliminary report, which had been sitting in the Xenopsychology Division's shared folder since the year before. In it, she had noted, carefully and with a great deal of qualifying language, that certain alien species appeared to respond to the presence of human military personnel in ways that went beyond a standard threat response. She had noted it. She had flagged it. She had used the word anomalous 4 times in 12 pages. Nobody had done anything about it. Pete Harlan arrived on a Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, 3 of the 4 alien delegations had filed formal requests for a break. By Wednesday afternoon, the Krennic representative had reported what their ship's doctor described as an acute stress response with no identifiable cause. By Thursday, the summit had ended. No arguments. No threats. No raised voices. Pete Harlan had sat in a chair, answered questions when they were asked, eaten the lunch that was provided, and been, in every way that anyone could see or measure, professionally polite. The summit ended anyway. Dr. Faye Gould had spent 8 months interviewing everyone who had been in that room. 76 interviews. She had spoken to delegates, aides, translators, the medical officer from the Krennic ship, and 2 Dothraki fleet observers who had attended as support staff. She had read every report, every log, every piece of data the station had collected during those 3 days. Her report was long. Most of it was careful language. Qualifications. The kind of writing that comes from a person who has found something that does not fit any of her existing boxes and is trying very hard not to say so directly. But in the appendix, the one she had almost not included, the one she had written at the end of a very long night and decided to include anyway because she was, above everything else, honest, she wrote something more direct. She wrote, the subjects did not fear Colonel Harlan. Fear implies a threat assessment. What the subjects experienced was something closer to recognition. The way prey recognizes a predator, not because the predator has moved, but because of the quality of its stillness. She wrote, Colonel Harlan was asked, in debrief, whether he had felt out of place at the summit. He said no. He said it felt like every other negotiation he had been part of. When asked to explain, he said, you sit down. You figure out what they need to walk away alive. You give them a version of it. That is what negotiation is. She wrote, the subjects heard the word alive and something in their nervous systems registered what can only be described as a terminal assessment. Then she underlined that last phrase, which was unusual for her, and moved on to the next section. Danny had the cleaned-up version of all this at breakfast. The appendix was not in his copy. But the shape of it was there, in the careful way the summary described the outcome without explaining it. Something had happened. Something that did not fit in a report. The report said so without saying so, the way a locked door says that something is on the other side. He found Lena in the corridor and asked her what Pete Harlan had done wrong. She said nothing. That is the whole problem. In the morning session, Sethval brought up the matter of military representation again. More formally this time. He framed it as a question of transparency. He said that Earth's consistent practice of sending only civilian diplomatic staff, while within its rights as a member of the conclave, created an imbalance at the table. He said that all other delegations had come with military representation. He said that understanding Earth's military position, not as a threat, but as a complete picture of Earth's standing, was necessary for any lasting agreement to hold. He said it with no hostility in his voice. He said it the way someone points out that one side of a bridge is lower than the other, not as a complaint, just as a fact that the people in charge of the bridge should probably look at. Lena listened. She made a note on her tablet. She said she would raise the issue with Earth Command and come back with an answer. Sethval folded 2 of his 6 hands in a gesture she had learned, over 4 summits, meant that he accepted this answer without fully believing it would lead anywhere. She did not blame him. That evening she opened the full classified file on her terminal and read the part she usually skipped, Faye Gould's appendix. She had read it before. She read it again because she was going to have to explain something soon, and she wanted to make sure she still understood it herself. She got to the part about the word alive. She sat with it for a moment. Just that one word, sitting in the middle of a sentence in a clinical report, doing the work of a paragraph. She closed the file. Outside the window, the star was in a different position than it had been the night before. The station was still turning. Everything out here kept moving, even when it looked like it was standing still. Pete Harlan was in Vermont, the file said. Growing things. She had never met him. She had always thought, if she ever did, she would know him by the quality of his stillness, the thing that had emptied a room in 3 days without a single raised voice. She turned off the light. The station kept turning. The Voreth made their formal request on the 4th morning of the summit, and they did it the proper way, submitted in writing the night before, correctly translated, copied to all 11 delegations. Sethval stood at his place at the round table and read the request aloud in his own language while the translation software delivered it to every earpiece in the room. The request said that Earth's consistent practice of sending only civilian diplomatic personnel, while legally within its rights as a member of the conclave, created an imbalance at the table. The request said that all other delegations had come with military representation. The request said that understanding Earth's military position, not as a threat, but as a complete picture of Earth's standing and commitment, was necessary for any lasting agreement. The request said, in its final line, that Earth's willingness to be fully known was the measure of its willingness to truly know others. As diplomatic pressure went, it was very politely worded. Lena sat at Earth's seat and listened to it with her hands flat on the table and her face doing nothing. Danny, beside her, wrote something in his notepad and then looked at what he had written and crossed it out. She asked for 2 hours to consult with Earth Command. Standard language. Sethval accepted this with the folded hands gesture. The other delegations accepted it too. Nobody pushed. They had been waiting for this answer for several summits now. 2 more hours was nothing to them. She found a soundproofed side room off the main corridor, a small, plain space with 1 table, 2 chairs, and a comm terminal built into the wall. She sat down. Danny came in because she had not told him not to, and by now she had stopped pretending that keeping him out of things was useful. He stood in the corner with his notepad. She opened a comm line to Earth Command. General Calmoro appeared on the screen. He was 62 years old and had the face of a man who had been woken in the middle of the night by bad news enough times that he no longer looked surprised by it. He was at his desk. Through the window behind him it was morning somewhere on Earth. She could see trees. Lena, he said. General, she said. They have made a formal request. All 11 delegations. They want military representation at the table. He was quiet. How many delegates are we talking about? He asked. 47. Plus aides. He said nothing for a moment. He looked at something on his desk that she could not see. You know what happened last time, he said. I know. 1 officer. 12 delegates. The whole thing fell apart in 3 days. I know, Cal. 47 people. He said it slowly, the way someone says the name of a city that used to exist. She told him about the political situation. She told him about the near war between the Voreth and the Durathi 6 months ago, how close it had been, how many ships had been sitting on the edge of a decision that could not be taken back. She told him that refusing a formal request from all 11 delegations was not just a diplomatic problem. It was a message. And the message it sent was that Earth was hiding something. That Earth was not committed. That Earth showed up to these tables as a performance rather than a genuine effort. He listened. He did not interrupt. That was one of the things she respected about him most. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. If I send someone with rank, he said finally, it will be worse than last time. The more wars a person has seen, the stronger the effect. The xenopsychology team has confirmed that. Rank and experience go together. So what do you do? She asked. I send someone young, he said. Lowest rank that still carries the thing. Someone who has been out there but not long enough to have too much of it built up. He paused. That is the theory, anyway. Danny, in the corner, had stopped writing. He was just listening now. "What is the thing?" he asked. Lena looked at him. Morrow, on the screen, looked at him too, a long, level look, the kind that takes the measure of a person without appearing to. "Ask her," Morrow said. "She can explain it better than I can." Lena was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Later." Morrow looked back at her. "I will send someone. It will take 2 days to get there. Keep the session going. Tell Sethval that Earth takes the request seriously and is arranging representation. He will know that means we have been thinking carefully about why we do not normally do this," she said. "Yes," Morrow said. "He probably already knows that." There was a pause on both sides. "Who are you sending?" she asked. He told her the name. She wrote it on her tablet and looked at it for a moment. "She is 26, Lena said. "Yes." "She is a corporal." "Yes." "Cal." "She asked the fewest questions when we briefed her on this assignment," he said. "That is the right quality for this kind of job. Someone who goes where they are sent and does the work without needing it explained to them piece by piece." He said it like that settled the matter. Maybe it did. "She will be there in 2 days," he said. "Try not to make any promises before she arrives." The screen went dark. Lena sat in the plane room for a moment. The ventilation made its soft, constant sound. Danny was still standing in the corner by the wall. "What is the thing?" he asked again. She stood up and picked up her tablet. "You will see it," she said. "When she gets here, you will see it. And even then you will not have a word for it." She handled the afternoon session well. She told Sethval, in formal language, that Earth took the request seriously and that a military representative was being arranged. She said it would take 2 days for that person to arrive and she asked the conclave for their patience. Sethval accepted this. He did it without the folded hands gesture this time. That meant he believed her. The Durathi Fleet Admiral leaned over to his aide and said something in a low voice. The aide nodded. The Admiral looked at Earth's small flag on the table and then looked away. The afternoon session continued. Border logistics. Resource sharing between the Mari and the Pulhari. A communication rights disagreement that had been running since before Danny had this job. The ordinary, slow, careful work of keeping large and very different groups of people from making permanent mistakes. Danny sat beside her and did not write anything in his notepad for the first time she could remember. He just sat with his hands on the table, thinking about something. She did not ask what. That evening she sent a brief message to Earth Command confirming the arrangement. She ate alone in her quarters. The food was good. She had always thought the East Wing kitchen was underrated and that nobody gave it enough credit. She thought about a corporal named Diane Osei, 26 years old, somewhere between here and there on a transport ship, heading to a summit she had probably not been fully briefed on. Carrying the thing she carried without knowing what it looked like from the outside. From the outside it did not look like much. That was the whole point. That was also the whole problem. She finished her food and sat in the chair by the window and watched the stars set again behind the slow curve of the distant planet. 2 days. Then she would find out whether Mora was right that younger meant more manageable. She suspected manageable was the wrong word for any of it. But she had learned, over a long career, when to stop saying things out loud and just wait for what came next. She arrived on the 6th day with 1 bag and no escort. Lena was waiting at the docking bay when the shuttle from the transport ship came in. The bay smelled like engine exhaust and the same recycled air smell that the whole station ran on. 3 Durathi ground crew moved past with equipment carts without looking up. A Pulhari diplomatic aide was seeing someone off at the far end of the bay, speaking quietly, hands moving softly. Diane Osei came down the shuttle ramp last. She was short, shorter than Lena had pictured, though she could not have said why she had pictured anything specific. She had dark skin and close-cut hair and she wore a standard uniform with a corporal's rank visible on the collar. She had a single bag on one shoulder. She looked around the docking bay the way a person does when they have just arrived somewhere unfamiliar and are quietly noting the layout, the exits, the distance between things, doing it without appearing to. She crossed the bay and shook Lena's hand. "Delegate Wade," she said. Lena said. "Diane." She shook Danny's hand too. He was already watching her the way he had been watching things all week, carefully, with the notepad in his pocket that he was trying not to reach for. "How was the trip?" Danny asked. "Fine," she said. She looked around the bay again, briefly. "What is the food situation on this station?" He blinked. "The East Wing kitchen is pretty good." "Okay," she said. "What do I need to know before we go in?" Lena told her the basics on the walk to the diplomatic residential level. 11 delegations. The formal request. The history, not the Harlan history, not the full version, just the surface of it. Earth did not usually send military to these summits, the other species had formally pushed for it, she was here to be present at the table. Diane listened. She asked 2 questions. One was practical, whether she needed to speak during sessions or just attend. The other was about the dining room, specifically whether the East Wing kitchen served breakfast or only lunch. Danny wrote something in his notepad and then stared at what he had written. She ate a protein bar from her bag on the way to her room. She said she would be ready in the morning. She said goodnight and went inside and the door closed behind her. Danny stood in the corridor for a moment. "She seems normal," he said. "Yes," Lena said. "Is she?" Lena looked at the closed door. "Get some sleep," she said. The morning session started at 9. The plenary hall was full. All 11 delegations, full attendance, because the word had moved through the station the way words always move through small enclosed spaces, fast and ahead of the people involved. Earth was bringing someone in uniform. Earth was finally sending military representation. Everyone wanted to see it. Lena and Danny went in first. They set up at Earth's seat. Small flag. Tablets. Water glasses. The same arrangement as every other morning. Then Diane came through the main doors. She arrived at 1:09, uniform straight, hands at her sides. She walked to Earth's seat, pulled out the chair next to Lena, and sat down. She placed her hands flat on the table. She looked at the room. The room looked at her. And then something changed. Not the sound. The ventilation still hummed. A translator pinged softly somewhere. A Dorothy aide moved papers. All the surface sounds continued exactly as before. But something underneath those sounds, some quality in the air, some shared awareness that filled the room the way pressure fills a sealed space, shifted. Locked. Like a room full of people who had all heard the same thing at the same time and were all, separately, deciding how they felt about it. The Dorothy Fleet Admiral, who had arrived late to every session so far, was already in his seat. He did not move when Diane came in. He watched her with both sets of his eyes fully open, which Danny had learned by now was not his resting expression. The Krennic Warcast elder, who had been talking in a low voice with his aide, stopped talking. Sethval, across the table, looked at Diane for a long moment without speaking. Then he said something quietly, in his own language, that his translator rendered as a single word. "Ah. Just that. Nothing more." Danny wrote it down. He was not sure why. The session began. The morning agenda was the resource-sharing arrangement between the Mari and the Pulhari, the same disagreement that had been circling for 6 years. Representatives spoke. Others responded. Lena made notes and asked a careful question at the right moment, and the conversation moved forward in the small, steady way that diplomatic conversations did, not resolved, just nudged in the right direction. Diane sat beside her and did not speak. She was not still in the way a person is still when they are trying not to move. She was just present. Hands on the table. Eyes moving slowly around the room the way someone watches weather, not worried, just paying attention. When the discussion got heated, when the Dorothy and the Vorith briefly cut across each other about a related trade issue, every other person in the room responded in some way. A slight pull backward. A stiffening of the spine. The body preparing itself, the old animal part of every living thing getting ready to decide what to do next. Diane's expression changed slightly. She got interested. A small shift, not toward alarm, not toward tension. Toward focus. The kind of look a person gets when they see something they want to understand. Like the argument across the table was a problem she was already quietly solving. Danny watched her face for a long moment and then looked back at his notepad and did not write anything. By midday, 3 things had happened that nobody commented on out loud. The Krennic Warcast elder had excused himself, his aide citing a medical issue. The Durathi Fleet Admiral had moved his chair, very slightly, almost impossible to notice, away from Earth's side of the table. The Pulhari Ceremonial Guard, who had been standing at the door in full armor every session, had submitted a request before lunch to be moved to exterior duties. Diane ate a small meal during the break and asked Danny whether the kitchen had a dish without soy in it. He found her a different option. She thanked him. She ate it. She went back to her seat. The afternoon session continued for 3 more hours. Nobody was loud anymore. The Mari representative, who had been the most difficult voice in the room for 4 straight days, made 2 significant concessions, things she had been firmly refusing for the entire summit. She made them quietly, without any visible change in her position or negotiating style, as if she had simply thought about it carefully and reached a reasonable conclusion on her own. No one asked her what had changed. No one drew attention to it. The session ended at 4 in the afternoon. Lena gathered her things. Diane stood and stretched once, a small, plain movement, arms overhead, spine straightening, and then picked up her bag from under the table where she had stowed it that morning. "Same time tomorrow?" she asked. "Same time," Lena said. "Okay." She looked around the room, which was emptying now, delegates and aides moving toward the doors in their usual groups. Her eyes made one slow pass around the space. Then she gave a small nod, the kind a person gives when something confirms what they expected, and walked toward the exit. "East Wing for dinner?" she asked. "East Wing," Danny said. His voice was slightly off. She did not appear to notice. They walked out together through the main doors and into the corridor. The station hummed around them. Behind them, through the doors, the plenary hall stood empty, the round table, the 11 small flags, the dome ceiling with its slow-turning image of the stars above. Danny looked back once. He put his notepad in his jacket pocket without opening it. He kept it there the rest of the evening. On the last night of the summit, Sethval sent a message to Lena's terminal asking for a private meeting. She replied yes. She told Danny he was coming with her. He did not argue. The meeting room was the same plain space she had used to calm Calmoro 4 days earlier. 1 table. 2 chairs. The ventilation doing its soft, constant work. Sethval was already there when they arrived. He was alone, which was unusual. He normally moved with at least 1 aide. He had chosen the chair with his back to the wall. Lena noticed that. "Delegate Wade," he said. "Thank you for coming." "Of course," she said. She and Danny sat across from him. She waited. He set a tablet on the table and turned it toward her. It was covered in charts and dense data that she could not immediately read, his species notation, full of shapes that did not map to anything she had learned. Below the charts, translated into her language, were labels she could read. Physiological response data. Collected during the current summit. 43 data points. All of them from the past 2 days. All of them recorded during sessions when Diane had been in the room. "My science team has been running an analysis," he said. "Not just from this summit." They cross-referenced the data with records from the 2219 incident. And with 4 other documented cases where Earth military personnel appeared in environments shared with other species. Lena looked at the charts. She said nothing. "Your soldiers," Sethval said, "have made peace with dying." Danny looked up from the table. "Not acceptance," Sethval said, before either of them could speak. "We understand acceptance. We have species among the 11 who practice acceptance of death as a spiritual discipline, the Mari monks, the Pulhari end singers. This is not what we observed." He pointed to one of the charts without touching the screen. "This is different. Your soldiers have processed death the way we process mathematics. As a solved problem. They enter every room, having already decided the worst possible outcome and found it something they can live with. Not desired. Not preferred. Simply not a stopping point." The ventilation continued. Danny had his hand in his jacket pocket, near his notepad. He did not take it out. "Every species at this table," Sethval continued, has built its civilization on one foundational idea: that survival matters more than any single principle. This is what makes negotiation possible. You trade. You give ground. You survive. You cannot negotiate with something that has removed survival from the top of its list. We do not have a model for it. Our systems, diplomatic, psychological, biological, do not have a proper category for it. He looked at Lena directly. Both sets of his eyes. Corporal Osei is 26 years old, he said. She has been a soldier for 4 years. She sat at that table for 2 days, and she already, somewhere that we cannot measure, only observe, she already does not fear the end of herself. She has made that calculation. It is done. It is behind her. Lena was quiet. Is that what the 2219 incident was? Danny asked. The same thing. Colonel Harlan was 51, Sethval said. 28 years in service. The effect was much stronger. It was too strong. It was, he paused, sorting through words, like a room that is too bright to see inside. And Diane? Lena asked. Enough that we feel it, he said. Not so much that we cannot function. He folded 2 of his 6 hands in the gesture she had spent 4 summits learning to read, something between acknowledgement and a weight. We felt it. That is the point. He reached across the table and touched the edge of the tablet, turning the screen off. The border accord was signed this morning, he said. All 11 delegations. Danny's head came up fast. All 11. All 11, Sethval confirmed. Lena said nothing. She had seen the notification come through on her terminal that morning. She had read it and then set her terminal face down on the desk and not touched it again, because she had not been ready yet to fully believe it. The Dorothi and the Vorith, Danny said slowly. That dispute has been running for 6 years. Yes. What changed? Lena asked. She kept her voice flat. What was it that finally moved them? He was quiet for a moment. The quiet of a person arranging words carefully because the wrong ones would not carry what he meant. We do not know how to negotiate against something that has already accepted losing, he said. That is the truth of it. When your corporal sat at that table, every delegation felt, below thought, below language, that Earth would still be at the table tomorrow. And the day after. And every day that followed, for however long it took. No concession would end Earth's presence. No delay would use up Earth's patience. No pressure would cause Earth to decide the cost was too high. He paused. We could not outlast that. So we stopped trying to. The room was very quiet. You signed the accord, Lena said carefully, because she made you feel you had no other option. No, he said. He said it firmly but without offense. We signed because she helped us understand something we had not understood before. Your military does not come to these summits because they would make peace too completely. They would settle things so finally that there would be nothing left to discuss at the next summit, or the one after that. That is not a threat. It is simply a different relationship with the problem than we have. A different relationship with the end of things. He stood. His full height was considerable in the small room. I am grateful for this summit, he said. And for the understanding it produced. Please tell Corporal Osei that the Vorith delegation found her presence clarifying. He left. Diane was in the docking bay the next morning when Lena found her. Bag on her shoulder. Already ready. She had checked out of her room before breakfast and eaten one last meal in the East Wing kitchen. Danny had seen her there on his way past, sitting alone with something that had eggs in it, reading something on a small personal screen. The accord was signed, Lena said. I heard, Diane said. That is good. Sethval wanted me to tell you that his delegation found your presence clarifying. Diane considered this for a moment. Okay, she said. She did not ask what it meant. Did you know? Lena asked. Did you have any idea what you were doing in that room? What effect you were having? Diane looked at her. A direct look, clear and plain, the kind of look that does not perform anything. I was just sitting there, she said. Lena looked at her for a long moment. I know, she said. The shuttle was ready. Diane shook Lena's hand and then Danny's. She walked up the boarding ramp without looking back. The ramp closed. The shuttle ran through its departure sequence. Then it moved out of the docking bay and into the dark. Danny stood beside Lena and watched it go until it was no longer visible. She was not trying to do anything, he said. She was just being a soldier. Yes, Lena said. And that was enough. It was too much, she said. And it was exactly enough. At the same time. He was quiet for a moment. We are never going to do this again, are we, he said. Send someone. Not unless we have to, she said. Maybe not even then. She picked up her bag. They had a debrief in 2 hours, a call with Cal Morrow, 17 pages of post-summit documentation, and a planet 7 light-years away that was going to want a clear and simple explanation for why 11 species had signed a border accord in 6 days when they had been arguing for 6 years. She would write a report that said almost nothing true, in careful and professional language, and she would file it. The true version was not a report. The true version was this: Earth never sent its military to peace summits because a soldier sitting at a table was not the same as a diplomat sitting at a table. A diplomat worked until both sides could say they had won something. A soldier worked until the dying stopped. The process looked the same from the outside. The shape of it was different. The willingness to reach the end of it, whatever the end turned out to be, was different in a way that had no name, only a quality. That quality lived in the way a person sat in a chair. It lived in a kind of stillness that came from having looked at the worst possible outcome and decided it was something that could be survived. Every species in the galaxy had built its civilization on the belief that the worst outcome had to be avoided at all possible costs. And then they sat down across from something that had already paid those costs. And kept showing up. The accord held for 212 years. Earth never sent the military to a summit again. Some things worked better when the rest of the galaxy only almost understood them, close enough to feel the weight of it, far enough away to keep the peace. Lena walked toward the debrief room. The station turned slowly around them. The star came up again on the far side of the planet's curve, orange at first, then yellow, then something that had no name in any language currently in use. Danny caught up with her in the corridor. His notepad was in his hand. For the first time all week, he did not know what to write.